This year, our community celebrated Mahashivratri by beginning a deep study of Dhyana Yoga. This commenced on March 1st. And we have flowed through the purification, the preparation, the personalization, and the perfection, all relating to contemplation, to Dhyana Yoga. After Prince Arjuna asks and Shri Krishna shares, then Prince Arjuna poses problems with this system of purification, preparation, personalization, perfection. Shri Krishna follows this by sharing practice. Practice is the only way to resolve any problems so that one is feeling, experiencing, being a perfect joy. A perfect joy is an independent joy. We have now completed 42 days, 6 weeks of Dhyana Yoga. There are only 5 more verses left. Only 5 more days of this deep study. Are you practicing? Are you feeling this perfect joy? Prince Arjuna right now has shifted the focus away from problems to an extreme problem, dying. I'm practicing for perfection, but now the problem is not my mind. The problem is my body. What if my body dies? In verse 41, Shri Krishna shares, if you're practicing and you have a desire for that which is not peace, when the body dies, you will go to heaven, experience that desire, and then you will be born into a home where there's prosperity and purity. Focusing less on the externals, more on the internals. If you're contemplating, you have a desire, you will get up. You will fulfill that desire, and then eventually you will come back to practicing contemplation. A teacher has shared, if your personality is 2/3 selfless, this is a gauge for you to gauge what kind of home you're born into. If your personality is 2/3 selfless, that means nishkama, then you're born into such a home. And as a child, you will begin sadhana. You will begin all that is required for contemplation. In verse 42, Athava yoginameva kule bhavati dhimatam etadhi durlabhataram loke janma yadidrisham. Alternatively, Athava yoginameva kule bhavati dhimatam. If you're practicing and you have a desire, this desire is not for anything, anyone other than peace, but the body dies. You don't go to heaven. Why would you? You simply are born into a family of those whose intellects know what's important and they're following that. Dhimatam, this is the purpose. Yoginam, we follow through on this purpose. So no heaven, they simply have a different equipment to continue. A teacher has shared, you will be born into such a family if your personality is 95% selfless. The nishkama is not 2/3, but it is almost complete, almost completely selfless. Then you are born into such a family where you are born as a sadhu. That child is saintly, is noble. See the differences? Now, for us to analyze how we were when we were children. When did we start to practice that which will help us for contemplation? Let me share some completing thoughts here before we get into a very fascinating detail about our rebirth. For all of you who are in our Vedanta and Bhagavata course, a very lovely portion was in the 10th section, I believe chapters 80 and 81 or 81, 82, about Shri Dhamma. Shri Dhamma is also known as Sudama, Kuchela. He has lots of names. And his wife's name is Sushila. They both have a relationship with Shri Krishna. What is Sushila's relationship with Shri Krishna? He is the source of bhukti. Bhukti means position, possession, pleasure. And what is Shri Dhamma's relationship with Shri Krishna? Bhakti. He is the source of devotion, love, immersion. And Shri Krishna reciprocates both to them. What does Sushila get? A lovely sari, a lovely home. What does Shri Dhamma get? Bhakti. He never loses Shri Krishna, and Shri Krishna never loses him. That's the difference that is also shown here between the home you're born into versus the family you're born into. What Puja Swami Tejomayananda shared with us. A value is only practiced based on how much value we give that value. A value is practiced based on how much value we give that. Agree? Last night, I had a meeting with our parenting culture team. On Monday, April 18th at 9 p.m., we're beginning a community on parenting culture. And in May, the entire focus will be on discipline. Those parents who value discipline, they will follow through with discipline, correct? But those parents who don't value discipline, it's still a value, but they won't follow through. If you value a value so that you can get something, you are the seeker in verse 41. If you value a value not to get anything, you value the value for the value, you are the seeker in verse 42. So reflect. Why do you practice discipline? Or why don't you practice discipline? Why are you kind? So someone can be kind back to you. Or are you kind because that's the right way to think and speak and act? We continue. When one is born into such a home or such a family, what happens? That's Prince Arjuna's question. When I fall, then what? Verse 43. Tatra tam buddhi samyogam labate parva dehikam yatate cha tato bhuyaha samsiddhau kuru nandana. Tatra, which means there. In that home or in that family. Buddhi samyogam. One will be joined or reunited with all of the intelligence, all of the knowledge from where? Labhate, that they gained, that they developed. When? Parva dehikam. What they gained, what they developed in their previous body. This is Vivek A. Vivek A has become, let's say, 2/3 Nishkama. Vivek A's body dies. Vivek is now born into Vivek B, a fresh body. All of that 2/3 of selflessness will continue. If you got up to 95, you'll continue at 95. If you're at 5, you'll continue at 5. How come we don't feel this? When you think of a habit you have, typically you don't remember how that habit started. It's become a general part of you. In the same way, this selflessness, this has become part of you. It is a general knowledge, so you forget the details, but the general selflessness continues. Have you understood that? And that is Shri Krishna looking out for you. Imagine you knew who your parents were from a previous birth. You knew that specific. Then in this lifetime, which set of parents do you love more? Those ones or these ones? It is Shri Krishna looking out for us that we forget the details, but the general evolution continues. Are we all clear about that? Okay. Yatate cha tato bhuyaha. And having been reunited with this evolution, bhuyaha, one continues to seek with more steadiness, sincerity. Why? Because their body is fresh. It's a new field. Which is why I keep sharing, instead of making death an experience of grief, make death an experience of celebration. It is a graduation. All is fresh. And specifically, samsiddha. One engages so that they're not siddha, which means powerful. Samsiddha. They are peaceful. And Shri Krishna carefully uses the word kurunandana. Prince Arjuna, do this. Keep on striving. Some more reflection points. We have a very lovely subhashitam in our culture, a word of wisdom that shares. At the time of death, who is your only friend? Does anyone know this? Please share in the chat if you do. As you're dying, when the body dies, who is your only Eva friend? It is very good. What you're sharing in this word of wisdom, it is Dharma. In this context, your evolution is your only friend. Not the people around you, not the stuff in front of you, but only what's inside. Everything else will fall away. These verses, in a very simple summary form, are encouraging us, strive. Strive irrespective of context. If you're tired, strive. If you're sick, strive. If you're dying, strive. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Oh. 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 Appreciate, relax, enjoy, chant, inquire. Observe. In the science of oneness, the infinite, the divine, is oftentimes described as the Sakshi, the witness or the observer. Personalization is changing one's sense of I by practicing observation. Our sense of I is becoming the divine, the infinite. Observe how the intellect subtly makes plans to create joy. In a simple sense, this can be called desire. Intensify the observation to even when the intellect is being directed to inquire. Even inquiry is in a field of separation. That there are two entities that I'm filtering, prioritizing. Rather than desiring and inquiring, observe how the intellect functions, what the intellect is. Visualize the antakarana, the inner world. In a simplistic sense, the mind and intellect as a post office. A post office knows about every letter and package that comes into the building, every package letter that's flowing through the building, every package letter that leaves the building. All this post office touches is stamped that we know all that is happening. Feel observation is this stamp. There's no need to even direct the inner world, the post office, the antakarana. Just watch this. Observe. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.